and start making millions.
If you do this one thing for me, if you buy this,
if you really
Just
want
3
to.
easy
Don't
steps
do it
to change
perfectly.
your life.
It's not good
I
enough.
love you best.
I love
You don't have it
never
figured out in a pint now. You never.
You aren't truly safe unless you are now.
You don't need any help. You can do it all.
Turn the tables, we flipped. Paint the beauty we split. Na 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 na.
Good morning. Welcome to Ripon Community Church. My name is Sam. I'm one of the pastors here. So good to be here with all of you today. A couple quick things before we get too far in. We are starting a brand new series. If you haven't noticed, it's Haunted by Lies. There we go. It's really corny, but laugh with me just for a second. All right, thank you. We're going to talk about these believable lies over these next few weeks. We're going to talk about these lies that sometimes just seep into our lives. We don't realize that they're there. We don't realize that we're living by them. And when we do, what happens is they wreak havoc on our lives. They mess us up in some really big ways, and it stinks. It's not good. We're going to address lies like it's possible to please everyone. We know it's not true, but sometimes, boy, do we believe it. We're going to address lies like perfection is attainable. We know that one's not true in this lifetime either, but sometimes we act like that's all we're going to try and do with our life. And then lastly, the fourth one, because we're going to do a different one today. The fourth one is the lie that more control equals less anxiety. It's actually not true. And what I'm really excited about is to announce to you that on November 20th, we're hosting a guest speaker. Her name is Sharon Miller. She's from Durham, North Carolina. She's a speaker that speaks all across the country. She's got a number of books. Her most recent one has been a bestseller in a couple different segments. It's called The Cost of Control, Why We Crave It, the Anxiety It Gives Us, and the Real Power God Promises. It's great. I'm in the middle of reading it. I'm really excited for it. It's super good. I can't wait for her to be here for that November 20th, so make sure you're here on that day. So today, though, we're going to address a different line. And I want to start by talking about this fact, and maybe you're like me with this. Maybe this is something you also enjoy. But personally, I love individual sports. Anybody with me? Like ones that you do by yourself, like running, wrestling. Yes, anybody? 2 of you? Great. This is great. But I especially love the ones that like really push you, like individually to the limit, like to that place of like you're just really struggling, whether it's running or cycling or wrestling, something where it's just you. There's no one else. Like in wrestling, you go out on the mat, it's just you and another person. You step on the line, they're there, you shake hands, the ref blows the whistle, and that's it. It's just the 2 of you. You've got no one else to rely on you, no tag team, and it's just you and that other person, and you're wrestling like crazy, trying to win the match, trying to pin them, trying to get some points. It's all you've got is yourself. It's fantastic. I love it. It's exhilarating. Try watching wrestling. Actually, when you go to a wrestling match, watch the stands, because people are like this the whole time. No! And it's great. It's so much fun. Anyways. Pro tip for you. Running is similar. That's also like that as well. It's not one-on-one, but you're still all you've got. You can't hide. You step up to the line, the gun goes off, and you can't hide anymore. You've got to show what you've got. You've got to run the best you can. The gun fires, and you either go faster than the other people or you don't, and that's just what it is. It feels so pure. What I love about it is it's also biblical. Like these are the biblical sports. I don't know if you know this or not, but Paul, like in one verse, he even says both of them basically. He says, so I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing, wrestling, close enough. Right, the shadow boxing, like you're hitting the air, right? There's nothing there. Paul's not that kind of guy. He lands his punches. Like he nails it. He gets it. This isn't just training against the air. This is real life stuff. So as I think about this, my love for individual sports, the fact that they're in the Bible, doesn't it just make sense that when you're talking about life, when you're talking about achievements, when you're talking about growing your faith, the best thing you can do is go it alone, is do it yourself, make it an individual thing. That's the best thing you can do, right? No, it's not the best thing you can, not even close, because here's the thing. even these highly individual sports, they're not actually that individual. Wrestling is like 6 minutes on the mat. That's the only time it's individual, 6 minutes on the mat. High school cross country, it's a 5K. And unfortunately, for us, we get to see only so much. That's what you see, the 5K and the 6 minutes. That's what people see. We believe people do incredible things on their own. We think, oh, they must be special. They must be talented. They must have something that I don't. If I'm going to make it, whatever make it means to you, then I'm going to need to do this thing all on my own. Here's what people don't see. People don't see the hours stacked on hours of running next to teammates. They don't see the coaching that lays out a plan, the drill after drill after drill, practice with your training partner. When I ran in college, the guys I ran with were some of my best friends because literally I spent hours side by side running with these guys. You're with them for hours on end. It's all you could do. You spent hours with them. They were some of my best friends because of that. We got into some serious shenanigans on the streets of Crawfordsville, Indiana. It was great. In wrestling, I had one move. Like, no joke, I had one move. It's the only reason I was ever any good. And I was very good at that move because my training partner, my drilling partner, was really good at defending that move. And so I had to figure out how to do it even when people defended it. And it worked. It was so helpful. He's why I was so good. The best individual athletes in the world have the best coaches and the best teammates and the best support in the world. The truth is, there is no such thing as an individual sport. Doesn't exist. There's no such thing as an individual sport. In the same way, there is no such thing as a self-made man or woman. Here's where it matters for us today. There is no such thing as an individual faith or a self-made life. If you think you have to go it alone, you're wrong. And if you think you have to go it alone, you're setting yourself up for some serious heartache and struggle. Today, we're going to uncover what it looks like to depend on God and depend on others in a way that makes life more fulfilling and joyful. But before we can do that, the first thing we need to do is uncover the lie. We have to uncover exactly what this lie is and where the root of it comes from. And for that, we have to go back. We have to go way back. Let me set the scene for you. Perfection. Perfection. God made all that there was. He created the world, and in it, he placed this perfect environment, this perfect place with all the perfect things. And inside of that, he places Adam and Eve inside perfection. It says, then God looked over all he made, and he saw that it was very good. Not just good, very good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the sixth day. There was perfection, and it had everything. It had an abundance. They had all that they need. I mean, imagine this, right? It says, there's abundance. It says, then God said, look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth and all the fruit trees for your food. Can you just imagine walking and picking an orange? Like, oh, there it is. There's my lunch, afternoon snack. And then over here, there's an apple. And over here, there's a kiwi. I don't know, whatever they are. They're the most amazing fruits and foods. And it's delicious. A few nuts here and there. It'd be amazing. All that they have is right there. And then, it's not just that they sit around and eat all day. They have meaningful purpose. It says, then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, part of their purpose. And then fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. Humans were placed on this earth to reign, to rule, to grow into a group of people who would govern the world, rule over it, and do it in a godly and perfect way. So they had abundance, all that they needed. They had purpose. And they also weren't alone. They had community. It says, then the Lord God made a woman from the rib, and he brought her to the man. This is Eve and Adam. There was Eve, there was God, and they weren't alone. And not only that, their charter was to grow into a family. So the community would only grow from there. It's stinking amazing. Guys, that's amazing. Can you imagine being there in that place? How much more could you ask for? It's perfect. It's incredible. It's wonderful. How much more could you ask for? If you know the story, apparently something. Because something happens, something deceitful, something that plants this idea in the mind of humanity that we continue to struggle with to this day. One day, Eve is on her own. She's alone, which this is always how things go, right? It always happens when you're alone. It's always how it starts. She's alone, and it says the serpent comes, the shrewdest of all animals. We would call this Satan, right? The evil one. This is what it says happens. It says the serpent was the shrewdest of all the wild animals, and the Lord God had made. One day he asked the woman, did God really say you must not eat the fruit from any of the trees in the garden? Of course we may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, the woman replied. It's only the fruit from the tree in the middle of the garden that we are not allowed to eat. God said you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die. You won't die, the serpent replied to the woman. God knows that your eyes will be opened as soon as you eat it, and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. Did you catch it? Did you spot the lie? Did you see it? It's the lie that continues to haunt us to this day. It's the lie that you'll be like God. In other words, it's you won't need God anymore. You won't need God anymore. The lie of independence. Adam and Eve, they had perfection. They had abundance. They had purpose. They had community, perfect community with each other and with God, but they wanted something they didn't need. They wanted independence, the ability to do things on their own, to not need someone else. And we're sold this lie still to this day. Every day of the week, we're sold this lie. Buy this truck. You're going to be able to drive off into the mountains and be perfectly self-sustainable, not need a thing when you're out there. It's going to be amazing. All independent, right? And buy this personal phone. You can watch anything you want, see anything you want, talk about anything you want. You won't even have to share. It's amazing. It's blissful. Like, this is great. All you, baby. It's great. It's all you. It's to take this class, and once you take this class, you won't need help anymore. It's in our relationships too. Don't get too close or you might get hurt. If you ask for help, you're too weak. You're not capable. It all feeds into this lie of independence, of not needing anyone, of being the master of your own life. The desire to be like God is the desire to not need God. But we do that, when we think that we're all on our own, that we can do it on our own, do you know what happens? Do you know what happens when we believe this lie? It sends us into the shadows. Or in Adam and Eve's case, into the bushes. Its ability to make us feel like we need to hide is uncanny. Adam and Eve, they find themselves hiding from God. The desire for independence makes us ashamed of our needs. It steals from us the gift of needing others and needing God. We had a house. We bought a house a year ago. We moved there about a year ago. And shortly into having our new house, walked down in the basement and it flooded. Yay. Have you been there before? Anybody? Yes? Okay, you're nodding your heads. You're bringing up really good memories for you. I'm glad. So I go down there. It flooded. The only problem was it hadn't rained yet, which is a little confusing, right? And so I go down there and start sucking up the water, trying to get it all taken care of, trying to figure out what happens. We're like, what in the world? It didn't rain. It couldn't be that. So there must be something. And then we looked, there's a washing machine. Like maybe we ran the load. It spilled over, whatever. It was too big of a load. We got 3 kids. It happens. And we've been there too. What you're trying to figure, but that's a lot of water. So we take care of the washing machine. We think we've got it figured out. A week or two go by, or a couple days go by, or whatever. And then it happens again. What's going on? What's happening? This isn't very fun. I'm not enjoying this. Long story short, we go back and forth and back and forth. It happens. Finally, narrowed down, it had to be the water softener. Like, this is the only option, right? It's got to be that water softener in the corner that's inconspicuous, and you feel like it's not a big deal, but apparently it is. Here's my little tip for you today. You can take this to the bank. When you have flooding and it's not because of the rain, call the plumber. It's a smart idea. When we got there, the plumber, he does this thing where, he walks down the stairs to the basement, a nice basement, right? Like, walks in, oh, I'm glad you're here. Like, oh, I see this little water softener here. And it's interesting. You've got 2 black hoses off the back there. And one's in the slot there, and the other one's not. Sir, I think you switched those hoses. What had happened is somehow one of the hoses had fallen out, and we had put the other black hose in there. And the one that was in there was the one that discharges everything, right? Like, sends it down the drain, and it was filling our basement. Really exciting stuff here, guys. This is really wonderful. 5 minutes and $100-some later, and it was fixed. Have you been there before? Right? I was pretty embarrassed. Like, I can't believe I missed that. I can't believe that happened. I'm going to blame it on the kids. Probably it was them. Here's the thing. I could be proud and have a wet basement, or I could be a little humble, fork over a little money in this case, and have a nice dry basement because somebody came and helped. There's a right decision here, and I could also maybe be a little more observant. That would help too. But here's what I think we're afraid of, and this is the power of this lie. We're afraid of needing people. It's scary. It's hard. And we, especially us Wisconsin Midwestern types, we hate being a burden on others. It's scary to need someone else. But that's not what God teaches us. It's not what he teaches. God doesn't teach us to be utterly dependent on others. God teaches us to rely on each other and be reliable for each other, which brings us to the first truth that we can use to combat this lie that haunts us. It's the first of 3 truths that tell us who we really are. Truth number 1 is this: God made us to rely on each other and to be reliable for each other. It's both. Take a look at what the Bible describes this as. This is how the Bible describes this. Paul says, and he says, yes, the body has many different parts, not just one part. If the foot says, I am not a part of the body because I am not a hand, that does not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear says, I am not a part of the body because I am not an eye, would that make it any less a part of the body? If the whole body were an eye, how would you hear? Or if your whole body were an ear, how would you smell anything? But our bodies have many parts, and God has put each part just where he wants it. This is how Paul describes quality community. It's the way Paul sees the church working. It's what the church should look like. We are not made to be utterly dependent on others, and we're also not made to be completely independent of others. We are made to be in community with others, to be on the team, to be interdependent. Interdependent. Not independent, not dependent, interdependent. That's a nice word that basically means we're here for each other. We're here for each other. Fun fact, every Thursday, staff, whoever is here in the building at the time, sometimes there have been volunteers here, and I've said, hey, why don't you come in on this? And what happens is whoever is giving the message that weekend, so in this case it was me this week, comes up on stage, everybody sits there in those seats, and we go through the talk for the weekend. Like, they actually give it full from start to finish, all the way through. It's a little bit of a rough draft, but you're going through it. And we started this practice about 7 months or so, and what's beautiful about this is we give loads of feedback. We tell the person what worked, we tell them what didn't work, what could be better. Does this adequately teach the message that's in the Bible? And then that person takes all the feedback and tries to make the sermons better. I got to tell you guys, I've had my feelings hurt a few times. I'm just gonna be real, but you gotta get over it. Like, you gotta get through it. There have been times where I've given a message and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then like, yeah, that wasn't. And it's great though, because honestly, the messages in the weekend have always been improved by that. But you have to be willing to put yourself in a place where you can be on a team and it can be uncomfortable, but it's better. It's better because you help make each other better. God made us to rely on each other and be reliable to each other. And believe me, I give some wicked good feedback when they're up here too. They may have had their feelings hurt too. It goes both ways. But to be able to do that together is so great. And we have this culture here. Your staff is awesome. They're amazing. But you'd be silly not to invite in each other's help, feedback, encouragement. It's good for us. God made us to rely on each other and to be reliable for each other. That's truth number one. You ready for truth number two? Heads nodded, yeah? All right, good. Number two, becoming aware of your dependence on God is how you become more mature as a Christian. That seems backwards, doesn't it? You'd think the more independent you get, the more mature you are. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Let me tell you why I know this is true. Take a look at what Paul says. I come back to this verse all the time. Paul says this. Each time he's talking about Jesus speaking to him, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I, Paul, am glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's Paul. That's Paul. He's maybe, beside Jesus, the most competent, smart, gritty man maybe to ever walk the face of the earth. And this is how he talks about his relationship with Jesus. I cannot tell you the number of times I have personally gotten to the point here at church especially that I have said to God, God, I can't solve this. I want to, but I cannot solve this. I'm done. I can't do it. If this is going to happen, it's got to be you. And can I tell you what happens? That's when it happens. Almost always, that's when it happens. It happened this last week, and if I'm honest, it happens almost every week. I'm trying to solve a problem. I was trying to force the problem to work, and then when I prayed, God, only you can do this. And this week it was like 15 minutes later, the whole thing got solved in a crazy way. But other weeks it's a lot longer, but it always happens. He ends up showing up and showing a path forward that I couldn't see before. Do you know what that does to a person? It strengthens your faith. It strengthens your faith. And guys, I'm not the type of person who is all, God will do it. Don't work hard, just let God do it. I'm the I can solve this. God, if you want to come along for the ride shotgun, that's great, but you can watch as I just do this in an amazing way. Like, you should watch me do this. That's my normal state of being. And time again, what happens is God shows up and he humbles me. And I am so grateful when he does. Because I can trust God more today than I could yesterday. Every time I rely on him and he shows me a new way, that's what the best kind of dependence looks like. Truth number one, God made us to rely on each other and to be reliable for each other. Truth number two, becoming aware of your dependence on God is how you become more mature as a Christian. Truth number three, the final one today, joy, happiness, and satisfaction are found in shared experience. We did it is always better than I did it. Even better still, God did it, and we got to play a part in making it happen. In running, it's better to win a team championship than an individual one. And I think that's pretty much true for every single sport there is. Team's always better. Team's always more fun. Goals accomplished together get celebrated together, and that's worth it. It's a blast. It's just natural. Together is better. It's more fun. You have better stories. You go on more adventures. Speaking of which, this week I was reminded of this time. I was end of college, about to graduate the next day to walk across the stage. I was down in Crawfordsville, Indiana, where I went to school at Wabash College. and I was going to go for a run, like get a workout in, right? Like just sitting around eating a lot of food, you got to get a workout in and do something. And so I'm going to go for a run, but I realized that it'd be more fun to go for a run with some of these guys that I've run with for 4 years. So I get them all together, we get together, and it's 4 of us, and we're out on a run, and we decide we're going to go on this route called Dead Horse, which was named before I was there because they ran through a pasture and found a dead horse. I know that's awful. I'm sorry. Get over it. The story does nothing to do with the story. So anyways, we're going to go on this route called Dead Horse. It's such a great run because you go through like this dump area where you take garbage, and then you kind of go through this spot where there's this pasture. Sometimes there's actual horses out there, and then you go on the railroad tracks and hop off. It's an adventure. It's super fun. We've done it countless times, and it's going to be great, right? 4 of us run together. Last time to run here on these streets together before we graduate. Super special. Well, we get to where the dump is. And normally, I had always gone there during the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that kind of a time. This was Saturday. And so there's this little booth, right, that you got to go through. And there's someone there, like manning the booth. And so we're running up to it. I'm like, oh, no big deal. We'll just run through here, mind our own business, not hurting anything. It's all fine. And a guy walks out, sees us, yells at us, hey, you got to turn around. You can't go in there. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm going to start slowing down. There's a guy next to me. His name's Micah. Solid guy, super great character. Like, he's fantastic. I love the guy. He says, run faster. Okay. So I start running faster, and so the other 2, and we're just going. And the guy's like, no, you got to turn around. You can't go in here. You got to turn around. He says, keep going. And so we run past him. Like, oh, what are we doing? And he starts yelling at us, I'm going to call. They're going to get you. Whatever. Like, we're freaking out, right? And so we go through this spot. We go around into where the dump is, over where the pasture is. We don't have to go out the way we came in, so we think we're safe. We hop on the railroad tracks, go in through town, and we're like looking over our shoulder this whole way back, freaking out. I'm like, why did we just do that? He's like, it's fine. And we're running through town, and one of the photographers for the college happens to be walking around with his camera, and he snaps this photo. Sorry for the bare chest. I'm still wearing a t-shirt, if you can tell. I'm so white. You can take that off now, please. That's one of my favorite pictures because I got to do that crazy thing with them. I got to go on a wild, fun, silly adventure with them. Probably should have been being a little careful. Maybe we did something we shouldn't have done. But in the end, it was so much fun to be together, to go on an adventure together. That run, that was awesome, right? I had a story to tell. Those 4 of us were closer because of that moment. That's where the joy is. That's where the joy is. When it's together. There's this verse at the end of Acts chapter 2. It always gets me. The followers of Jesus had just begun to figure out that Jesus was not yet done. He died, he'd risen, he'd ascended to heaven, but that was just the very beginning. So they start to teach about Jesus, and they're inspired by God's Holy Spirit. And in those initial weeks and months, this is how Acts chapter 2 describes the church. It says this: they worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the way while praising God and enjoying the good will of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. That's it. This is it, right here. It's a picture of the joy, of the happiness and satisfaction that are found in following God's plan. Here's the crazy part. Are you ready for this? Nod your heads, yes. Are we with it? Yes, yes? Okay, good. You ready for this? It's going to blow your mind. In the garden, Adam and Eve had 3 things. They had abundance, all that they needed. They had purpose, a role to play, and they had a community. They were doing it together. And here, all these years later, by following the example, the direction, and accepting the free gift of grace, mercy, and forgiveness of Jesus, we get to start experiencing it again. In Acts They took care of each other. Another verse close by this one says, everybody had all that they needed. They were sharing the message and teaching of Jesus. There was purpose. Even like saying, like, this is how the world should be ruled. We're ruling the world in a God way because we're following Jesus, bringing God's kingdom to this earth. They were in it together. It even says they were growing like they were originally supposed to do in the garden. Abundance, purpose, community. The lie is that we don't need God or that we don't need each other. The truth is that not only do we need God and need each other, life is fuller, it's more purposeful, it's more joyful when we experience it the way that Jesus intended us to first experience it. Life is better when we follow these three truths. The truth number one, that God made us to rely on each other and to be reliable for each other. Number two, becoming aware of your dependence on God is how you become more mature as a Christian. And number three, joy, happiness, satisfaction are found in shared experience. Let's use these truths to put that lie in our life to death. As you leave today, consider one of these three questions that talk about each of these truths. Number one is this: what might your desire for independence be stealing from you? Number two, where would you benefit from slowing down in your life and looking for God's leadership? And number three, in what part of your life do you crave more joy and more satisfaction? How can you include others in that area of your life? Because that can be the result then. As we finish, I'm going to say a prayer, and the prayer is very simple. It's that God would help us to experience life the way He intended, not alone, in a relationship with Him and a relationship with each other, and that it would give us the kind of joy and satisfaction and purpose and goodness that I know all of us are looking for. Would you pray that with me right now if you want? Dear God, thank you for your love, for the way that when we try to do this thing on our own, you are sitting there waiting, saying, hey, open arms, you come back to me, and here I am. And I'll show you the way that you're supposed to live, the way that's actually good for you and fun and joyful and purposeful. God, as we think about trying to do this thing on our own, help us to know that we were never meant to be independent or fully dependent, but we were made to to rely on each other. And then, God, as we think about needing you, help us to know that as we see how much you give us and the way that we are sustained by you, help us to become more mature by understanding our dependence on you. And then finally, God, help us to experience the joy and the goodness of a life lived not alone, but with you and with others by having some good adventures with friends, with us church. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.